Thank you, Shepard. Well, you can't beat them. How about Crucify them? The tape that is creating an energy shock all the way to the White House. Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you. I'm Neil Cavuto. And all of this on a day ExxonMobil reported making nearly $9.5 billion last quarter, and Wall Street called it disappointing. The clearest proof yet, the company's a big old target, and now there is no doubting. An EPA official caught on tape, saying he doesn't want to just get him, he wants to crucify him.
It's kind of like how the Romans used to conquer little villages in the Mediterranean. They'd go to a little Turkish town somewhere, and they'd find the first 5 guys they saw, and they'd crucify them. And then, that town was really easy to manage for the next few years. And so you make examples out of people who are, in this case, not complying with the law. So you find people who are not complying with the law, you hit them as hard as you can, and you make examples out of them.
Now, that administrator just issuing an apology for those statements. We'll get to that in a second. But that is not stopping lawmakers today from demanding a full investigation. One calling the comments actually part of the campaign of threats and intimidation by the White House. Hard to say whether such alleged tactics sent Exxon's profits dropping 10% from a year ago. But this much is not in doubt. The number of drilling permits on federal lands plunged 37% of the last 3 years compared with the prior 3. Now, my next guest feared it and now says this tape all but confirms it. Big oil has some big problems in Washington. John Hofmeister is the former president of Shell Oil. John, you've always argued this, and some of your critics have said, well, John's a little paranoid. What do you say now?
Well, Neil, I'm a Democrat, as you well know, and I'm very, very disappointed in some of the president's appointments. And in the case of Administrator Armendariz, I met him for the first time shortly after his appointment, and he made a very bold statement. He said, my job is to undo 8 years of environmental degradation under the prior administration. Now, I was the president of Shell during the prior administration, and I can assure you that the EPA administrator in Region 6 did a very effective and efficient job making sure that environmental laws were enforced. Along comes a new guy with no real experience in executive management, and suddenly his predecessor was somebody from the Dark Ages trying to ruin the environment, ruin the earth, and he's going to fix all of that. I'm not surprised to hear the Crucify statement. I think that a person who operates like a rabid bureaucrat deserves all the calumny that the Congress can throw at him. Because I'll tell you, the industry in Texas has basically written him off. He's not a productive negotiator. He's not doing his job the way it could be done to try to solve problems. He's more about enforcement. It's all about enforcement.
But maybe,
it's not about how
given this environment, the timing of this coming to light as ExxonMobil, even though those numbers were disappointing, they were still eye-popping. A lot of Americans see a company that is making this amount of money. People are going to start saying, well, maybe we are getting a little slippery here, and maybe this is not registering like you think. What do you think?
Well, in the case of ExxonMobil, they've got huge numbers. But if you look at their percentage of profitability over many years, it falls in the manufacturing average of about 5 to 6%. There's nothing unusual here.
No, I know what you're saying. No, John,
Neil,
you're preaching to the choir. I understand what you're saying. I guess what I'm saying is this is always in the PR part of this whole battle. Oh, yeah. And in the PR, it's going to say, well, now they're going after this guy for using the crucified term, as they should. But these oil companies are hardly slackers when it comes to making money hand over fist to a lot of Democrats, to a lot of liberals, a lot of environmentalists, to the EPA maybe, just as, if not more, offensive. What do you say?
Well, that's because it takes a practical mind to understand how the industry works and how profits occur in an industry that has all kinds of capital expenses and pays all kinds of taxes to the government, for which people should celebrate those profits because it goes right back into more capital for more energy. And at a time of high prices, what we need are profitable companies pouring their profits back into capital investments to increase supply. In fact, if the government would get out of the way of some of the opportunities to increase supply, more profits would go to work and maybe even bring down gas prices.
Well, when we're going to be getting into this in a second with a guest here, but, the argument is that they are doing it. The White House says we are doing that. As for this EPA official, featured in the video. He did issue a statement today that I apologize to those I've offended and regret my poor choice of words. It was an offensive and inaccurate way to portray our efforts to address potential violations of our nation's environmental laws. I am and have always been committed to fair and vigorous enforcement of those laws. What he seems to be saying here, John, is take the Crucify out of it. I am trying and still trying, and we at the EPA are still aiming to make examples of those we feel are compromising environmental standards. What do you make of that?
Well, in the state of Texas, every major decision that he makes goes to court because the process that he's utilizing is considered so egregious and so unfair by those he's alleging are polluters that they seek refuge in the courts rather than try to work with him on a solution. I don't think that's productive. We put a person in charge of America's breadbasket, of the petrochemical industry of the nation across the Gulf Coast, and he's a crusader out to take care of his interest, where the only thing that matters is environmental enforcement among companies who put at the highest level of priority environmental protection. You don't get a license to operate in this industry, Neil, if you are a persistent violator of environmental rules. You have to follow the rules if you're going to be allowed to operate. And he comes down like these people that they ignore the rules, that they're negligent, that they don't care, when in fact the opposite is true.
All right, John, thank you very much. Good seeing you again.